Craigslist nightmare. I never thought I'd be one of those people who got caught up in some Craigslist horror story. You know, the ones where someone meets a seller and disappears, or buys an innocent-looking item that turns out to be cursed. But I was desperate. Desperation makes you blind. It started with a couch. I had just moved into a new apartment, a tiny one-bedroom on the bad side of town. The rent was cheap, and I was barely scraping by, so I figured Craigslist was my best bet for cheap furniture. After hours of scrolling, I found it. A beautiful, antique-looking couch for only $50. The ad was vague. Just a dimly lit photo and the words, "Take it today. Cash only." The address was about an hour outside of the city, in a rural area I wasn't familiar with. I should have known better, but the thought of getting such a steal was too tempting. So I texted the number, and within minutes, I got a reply. "Come before 8 p.m. Bring a truck." Something about the wording felt odd, but I ignored it. I borrowed my friend's truck, grabbed $50 in cash, and headed out just as the sun was setting. The house in the woods. The GPS led me down a series of winding back roads, further and further from civilization. The paved roads turned into gravel, then dirt. My gut told me to turn around, but I didn't. By the time I reached the house, the sun had dipped below the trees, casting long shadows across the yard. It wasn't what I expected. The place looked abandoned. Weathered gray wood, a sagging porch, windows so dark I couldn't tell if there were curtains or just emptiness behind them. A single light flickered on the porch. I killed the engine and stepped out, suddenly aware of how silent the area was. No crickets, no wind, nothing. I knocked on the door. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. Just when I was about to turn back, the door creaked open. A tall, thin man in his late 50s peered out. His face was pale, almost waxy. His eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. "You're here for the couch," he said. Not a question. Yeah," I said, shifting uncomfortably. He nodded and stepped aside. "Come in." Everything in me screamed no, but I told myself I was overreacting. It was just an old guy selling a couch. So I stepped inside. The room of furniture. The smell hit me first. Musty, like something had been left to rot. The living room was cluttered with old furniture, but not in a cozy, hoarder kind of way. Every piece looked placed like a showroom frozen in time. A dusty grandfather clock ticked in the corner. A set of dining chairs sat neatly in a row against the wall, despite there being no table. And then there was the couch. It was beautiful, just like in the photo, dark green velvet, ornately carved wooden legs, but something was off. The fabric was damp. "You like it?" the man asked, watching me too closely. Yeah, it's nice." He didn't move, just stood there staring. "Do you, need help moving it?" I asked, suddenly eager to get out of there. The man tilted his head, like he was considering something. Then he smiled, thin, stretched too wide. "No need. The others can help." The others? A door behind him creaked open. I turned my head just in time to see movement in the dark hallway. Shadows, tall and thin, slipping along the walls. My breath hitched. "Who else is here?" I asked, stepping back. The man's smile didn't waver. "The previous owners." I turned to run, but the door was closed. I didn't hear it shut. The room that shouldn't exist. I bolted toward the door, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My heart pounded as I turned back toward the room. The furniture had moved. The chairs, once lined against the wall, now faced me. The grandfather clock had stopped ticking. And the couch. My God, the couch. It was wet now, dripping something thick and dark onto the floor. The man was gone, but the shadows in the hallway had gotten closer. Then I saw them. Not people, not ghosts, something in between. Their faces were stretched, grotesque, mouths open too wide, their eyes empty holes. They moved in jerks, like puppets with their strings tangled. One of them reached for me. I backed away, my heel hitting the couch. I turned to run, but something latched onto my wrist. A hand, but it wasn't human. It was gray, fingers too long, skin stitched together like a ragdoll's. I screamed and yanked free, my skin burning where it touched me. The thing lunged, and I barely dodged, stumbling into the hallway. The escape. I ran blindly through the house, past more furniture. Rows of beds, armoires, rocking chairs all facing the walls like they had been put in timeout. Something whispered my name from the darkness. A door ahead. I slammed into it, bursting outside into the night. The truck was still running. I didn't look back. I jumped in, locked the doors, and floored it. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel. The house shrank in my rearview mirror, the porch light flickering. And then, the couch was in the truck. I nearly drove off the road. It was just there, sitting in the bed like it had been there all along. My breath came in shallow gasps. My skin crawled. I drove straight to the nearest gas station, pulled into the empty lot, and jumped out, heart hammering. The couch loomed in the truck bed, wrong in ways I couldn't explain. I had to get rid of it. I grabbed the edge, ready to shove it onto the pavement when it twitched. I froze. The fabric rippled, like something was inside, pushing from beneath. A low, wet gurgle came from within. I didn't wait. I backed away, got in the truck, and sped off. I drove until I found a bridge, where I pulled over, shoved the couch out, and watched it disappear into the black water below. I never looked back, but some nights, when I'm alone, I swear I hear something. A whisper, a voice calling my name, and my couch, my new one, it's starting to feel damp. The Craigslist nightmare. I've always prided myself on finding the best deals online. Craigslist was my go-to for cheap furniture, electronics, even a car once. But after what happened last month, I'll never use it again. It started with an ad for a vintage camera. I'd been collecting old cameras for years, and this one, a Leica M3 in pristine condition, was an absolute steal at just $200. The listing was vague, just a blurry photo and a message. Must sell tonight. Cash only. I hesitated. Felt too good to be true. A camera like that was worth thousands. But I let excitement override my instincts and sent a message. Within minutes, I got a response. Meet at 10 p.m. Bring cash. Come alone. I should have walked away. The meeting place. The address led me to an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered weakly, and the pumps were rusted and dry. My gut told me to leave, but my hands tightened around the envelope of cash in my pocket. If this was real, I was getting the deal of a lifetime. A lone figure stood by the building, partially hidden in shadow. He was tall, unnaturally thin, wearing a hoodie that obscured his face. He didn't move as I pulled up. I rolled down my window just enough to speak. Hey, you the one selling the Leica? The man nodded but said nothing. Can I see it? Still silent, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the camera. Even in the dim light, I could tell it was the real deal. My heart pounded. I had to have it. I stepped out of the car, keeping my distance. 200, right? The man nodded again, extending the camera toward me. I reached into my pocket for the money, but the second my fingers touched the cash, the gas station lights flickered and went out. Total darkness. The trap. A sharp sound. A footstep crunched behind me. I spun around, my pulse spiking. No one was there. I turned back toward the seller. He was gone. The camera was on the ground where he'd stood. I stood frozen, my breath ragged. The silence pressed in on me, thick and unnatural. Then I saw it, the faintest movement in the darkness beyond the gas station. A figure shifting just out of reach of the dim moonlight. Then another, and another. I wasn't alone. A whisper brushed against my ear. Too close. Not yet. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the money. My instinct screamed to run, but my feet wouldn't move. A scraping sound came from the gas station. My eyes darted toward the building just in time to see something crawl out of the broken window. Not climb, crawl. The thing that emerged looked human, but wrong. Its limbs bent in unnatural ways. Its head tilted too far to the side. And its eyes, God, its eyes were hollow, empty sockets that somehow still watched me. I turned and ran. The chase. I don't remember unlocking my car. 1 second I was sprinting, the next I was behind the wheel, slamming the door. My hands fumbled for the keys, shaking so bad I almost dropped them. A thud against the window. I screamed. The thing was pressed against the glass, its hollow eyes staring into mine. Its mouth stretched open, revealing a black void that shouldn't have been possible. The engine roared to life and I slammed on the gas. The car lurched forward just as the thing raked its fingers down the window, leaving deep, jagged scratches. I didn't look back. Couldn't. The aftermath. I made it home in record time, heart pounding in my ears. My door was locked the second I got inside. Every light flipped on. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then I realized the camera was sitting on my passenger seat. I didn't remember grabbing it. For a long time, I just stared at it, too scared to touch it. But eventually, curiosity won. I picked it up with trembling hands and turned it over. Felt ice cold. The film compartment was full. I don't know why I did it, but I developed the role the next day. The photos were all of me, standing in my driveway, sitting in my car, sleeping in my bed. The last one was taken inside my house, and I wasn't alone. The end? I don't sleep much anymore. Keep every light on, every door locked. But no matter what I do, I wake up every morning to find the camera sitting beside my bed, with a new roll of film inside. And I don't check the photos anymore, because I know what they'll show. The Craigslist job from hell. I've always been a little reckless when it comes to making money. Side gigs, quick cash, odd jobs, I've done it all. But what happened to me last year still haunts me. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have walked away the moment I read that Craigslist ad. It was simple. Looking for a night house sitter. Cash paid up front. No experience necessary. The listing was vague, but it promised $500 for a single night's work. Too good to be true, right? My gut told me to ignore it, but my wallet begged otherwise. I sent an email, and within an hour I got a response. Be at 741 Birchwood Lane by 9 p.m. Do not be late. No name, no details, just an address and a time. I looked up the house. It was in a secluded area just outside the city. The kind of place you wouldn't expect anyone to live in. But desperation makes you ignore the obvious red flags. That night, I pulled up to the house at exactly 8:55 p.m. It was an old Victorian, towering and lifeless. The windows were dark, the front porch light flickering weakly. Something about it felt off. I knocked, and the door swung open before my knuckles even hit the wood again. Standing there was a man, mid-40s, wearing a suit that looked a size too big. His face was pale, almost sickly, and he spoke in a hushed tone. "You're on time. That's good," he said, handing me an envelope. "Your payment, as promised." I opened it. 5 crisp $100 bills. I should have walked away. I had my money, but I was curious. "What exactly do I need to do?" I asked. He paused. "Stay inside. Do not leave until morning. No matter what you hear, do not open any doors. Do not answer any calls, even if you recognize the number. And most importantly," his voice dropped to a whisper, "do not look outside after midnight." With that, he stepped past me, vanishing into the night. I stood there, staring at the envelope. The logical part of my brain screamed at me to get back in my car and drive away. But I stayed. The house was eerily silent. No TV, no ticking clocks, no hum of an air conditioner. Just stillness. The furniture was antique, covered in dust, as if no one had lived there for years. But there were no cobwebs, no decay, just a house frozen in time. I tried to distract myself. Checked my phone. No signal. Figures. I found an old radio and turned it on, but all I got was static. Then, at exactly 11:47 p.m., I heard the first noise. A soft scratching at the front door. My stomach clenched. Maybe an animal? A stray cat? Then came the knock. A slow, deliberate knock. I froze. The man's warning echoed in my head. "Do not open any doors." I swallowed hard and ignored it. Minutes passed. Then more knocking, this time from the back door. Impossible. I tiptoed toward the kitchen. Through the sheer curtains, I saw a shadow, a figure standing perfectly still, not moving, not speaking, just waiting. I backed away, my breath shallow. My mind raced with explanations, but none of them made sense. Then my phone buzzed. No signal, but I had a message. Unknown number. Let me in. I dropped the phone. My hands trembled as I backed into the living room. The knocking turned into pounding. First at the back door, then the front, then the windows. I squeezed my eyes shut. It wasn't real. Couldn't be real. Midnight struck. The pounding stopped. Silence again. But this wasn't normal silence. It was heavy, suffocating, the kind that makes your ears ring. And then I heard it, a whisper, from outside, from everywhere. Look outside. I clenched my jaw, gripping the armrest of the old chair. My breathing was too loud. My heartbeat a drum in my ears. The whispering grew louder, more urgent. Look outside. I squeezed my eyes shut. No, I wouldn't. Then the sound changed. It wasn't whispers anymore. It was my name, spoken in voices I knew. My mother, my brother, my best friend. Look outside, please. I almost did it. My hands twitched. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. Unknown number. Do not look. That was it. I grabbed the envelope of cash and sprinted upstairs, locking myself in a bedroom. I shoved a dresser against the door and huddled in a corner. The whispers didn't stop. They lasted for hours. Then, at exactly 6 a.m., they ceased. I cracked the door open. Sunlight streamed through the windows. I inched downstairs. The house was exactly the same. No signs of forced entry. No footprints outside. Nothing. I grabbed my keys and bolted. Days passed before I could sleep again. I checked Craigslist for the ad, but it was gone. I tried to trace the email, but it led nowhere. The money was real, but so was everything else. A few weeks later, I drove past Birchwood Lane out of morbid curiosity. The house was gone. Not abandoned. Not burned down. Just gone. An empty lot where it once stood. I don't answer Craigslist ads anymore. I never thought a simple Craigslist ad would lead to the worst night of my life. It started when I was looking for a cheap used couch. My new apartment felt empty, and I didn't have the budget for anything fancy. Scrolling through listings, I found the perfect one, dark brown leather, barely used, only $50. Too good to be true, but I was desperate. The seller, David M., responded quickly. His messages were short, almost robotic. Still available. Pick up tonight? Cash only. That should have been my first red flag. But I ignored it. The address he gave me was on the outskirts of town, far from any main roads. Again, a bad sign. But I figured people in rural areas sold things online all the time. I texted my roommate, Chris, to come with me, but he was working late. So I went alone. It was a mistake. The house in the woods. The GPS led me to a dirt road flanked by dead trees, their twisted limbs reaching out like skeletal fingers. There were no streetlights, only my high beams cutting through the fog. I nearly turned around, but then I saw it. A small, one-story house with a sagging porch. No cars in the driveway. No lights on inside. I parked and texted David. No response. My stomach knotted. I thought about leaving, but I needed that couch. Besides, I'd already driven 40 minutes. Maybe he was just inside, waiting. I stepped onto the porch. The wooden planks groaned under my weight. Knock, knock, nothing. Knock, knock, knock. Still nothing. I checked my phone. No service. Perfect. I turned to leave. Then the door creaked open. The smell hit me first. A sharp, metallic stench like rust and something rotten. David, I called. My voice echoed through the darkened hallway. No answer. The air inside was thick, suffocating. I could barely see, but there was movement in the shadows. Something shifting. Then, from the darkness, a voice. You're early. It was a whisper, barely human. My skin prickled. Yeah, I stammered. I'm here for the couch. Silence. I took a step back. Something wasn't right. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. Then, the door slammed shut behind me. The trap. Panic surged through me. I spun around, fumbling for the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I turned. A figure emerged from the shadows. A man, tall and gaunt, with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes. His clothes hung loose, like they belonged to someone bigger. He grinned. "There is no couch." My breath caught. My heart pounded. I bolted for the nearest room, slamming the door behind me. My hands trembled as I fumbled for a lock. There wasn't one. Footsteps outside. Closer. I grabbed my phone, no service, no Wi-Fi. Just a black screen taunting me. A slow, deliberate knock on the door. Tap, tap, tap. "You shouldn't have come here." I searched the room, a small kitchen. Cabinets. A rusted fridge. A drawer, I yanked it open. A knife. I gripped the handle, knuckles white. The doorknob twisted. I backed into a corner, raising the knife. Then silence. Minutes passed. I strained to hear anything. Then a whisper. "He's coming." It wasn't the man's voice. It was higher-pitched, like a child's. Goosebumps erupted on my arms. Then something moved in the shadows. A shape, small and hunched, scurrying across the floor. I froze. A child. But something was wrong. Its limbs were too long. Its face twisted in a grotesque grin. Giggled. I ran. I didn't think, I just ran. Back through the dark hallway, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The man was waiting at the front door, knife in hand. But he wasn't alone. Dozens of them. Pale, grinning figures emerging from the darkness. Their eyes hollow pits. I lunged for the nearest window, smashing through the glass. Pain exploded in my arms as I hit the ground, shards slicing into my skin. I didn't stop. I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys. Behind me, I heard them laughing. Engines roared to life. Tires screeched. And then I was speeding down the dirt road, never once looking back. The aftermath. When I got home, I locked every door, every window. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I checked Craigslist. The listing was gone. David M. didn't exist. I tried calling the police, but what could I say? That I went to buy a couch and was chased by something inhuman? They'd never believe me. That night, I barely slept. Every creak, every shadow sent my heart racing. Then, around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text. "You left too soon. Come back." No number, no name, just those 4 words. I blocked the sender, but it didn't matter. The messages kept coming. Every night. For weeks. And then one final text. "We found you." I moved the next day. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear the whispers. Still see the grinning faces in my nightmares. And I know wherever I go, they'll always be watching.